Hey, what's up, guys? Haas here. Um, I've been kind of holding off on this whole Petraeus thing because I think it's personally tied to the whole Benghazi thing. And I'm not much for one for conspiracies or whatever, but I think it's kind of loosely tied to it, and I wanted to talk about that. For the last I don't know, long time, the intelligence industry has been taking heat from our politicians, taking the blame for a lot of stuff. And I think that they were, they do that because it's an easy target for them, because it'd be like me if I say had an employee that ran the front desk and it was his job to schedule everything, but he misscheduled everything. And I said, well, sorry, it's my scheduler. He can't really do his job very well, and so we make mistakes. Sorry about that. Sorry that you lost all this money or whatever, Sorry we bombed your house. And in reality, it's me that the buck stops with, because I hired that scheduler. That scheduler answers to me, just like the CIA answers to our administration or the Pentagon or whoever they answer to. They answer to somebody in government, and eventually all those mistakes, that buck eventually had to get paid for. That it had to be claimed. And I think that's what they did with Petraeus. I think they're throwing him under the bus. Petraeus is, I think he was probably a pretty good general. And, I don't really know his military history that well. All I know is that, he served to become a 4-star general. And you don't get that unless you're pretty good at what you do. As far as his affair, I'm not going to speculate whether there was any sort of conspiracy behind that. I'm sure there's people out there that are willing to do that. It doesn't really matter, I guess, if that's the case or not, because it's not like we can do anything about it. But I will say that it's not easy to be in that sort of position, and be in any position really, and have a woman that's fairly attractive, or even if not, if you're in a war zone, a lot of women are really attractive, and have one that close to you, and being in that situation, and especially if she's pushing for it, encouraging you or whatever. I'm not speaking from experience here. I'm a man and I have a penis, and so I know what it's like. But I'm not trying to make any excuses for anyone, especially not Petraeus or our government, because ultimately those Petraeus and our government are responsible for the failures in our system. And I think Benghazi is a it's a relatively small event that happened. It's there was an attack and a couple of guys got murdered, and that sucks, but people get murdered every day, and lots of people die all the time. But what it is it's a turning point in the the amount of evidence that there is that's been mounted against those who are in our government. And again, like getting back to that buck, the buck stops with Obama. Period. End of story. He's the commander-in-chief. The buck stops with him. I don't give a shit if people are saying that they're responsible or not. No. The buck stops with Obama. Period. You're responsible for those that are underneath you. Your Secretary of State, your head of CIA, whoever is, anyone who's under you, the buck stops with you. Period. You're responsible, and should be held accountable. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with Benghazi or any of that stuff, you need to look it up, because there was a lot of bad stuff that happened there, and all the special forces teams and the quick reaction teams that were in the area were not called to go. They were not allowed to be let in. even those Woods and the other fella that responded, they asked for permission to go and were denied. So there was some very serious, at the very least, serious miscommunications, and somebody's head should roll over that. And at most is some sort of conspiracy to, have that dude killed, our ambassador killed there. And I don't know what for reason, or so somewhere between there, somebody's head still needs to roll over this, over Benghazi. And in my opinion, Obama needs to be charged with whatever amount of responsibility can be charged against the commander-in-chief for his dereliction of duty. If he was there watching it on the television like it was reported, in his Oval Office war room or whatever he was in, then responsibility's on his head, and he needs to pay for it with to the full extent of the U.S. law. Thanks for watching.